suddenly the Trump White House has imposed these quotas on ICE to go out, and they're demanding more and more roundups. And so it was kind of inevitable that you would see this kind of confrontation and pushback because they're going to these workplaces and in heavily Latino working class communities like Paramount in Southern California. And so they're not shying away from the confrontation. They seem to be causing the confrontation, and you can just see that President Trump revels in the strongman image of, there's chaos in the streets, send out the troops. That is imagery that mobilizes his base and that accumulates even more power in the White House. So there's no question that the White House is provoking this, and it's a very delicate and very inflammatory situation that could very easily spiral out of control.
That was Max Boot, who is a Washington Post columnist and a writer, and he absolutely nails it with his assessment. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. Those of us who have been following Donald Trump and his ascent back into power are not surprised at all by Trump's aggressive moves in LA. Since the day he took office, Donald Trump and his minions have been itching for a confrontation that would give him the excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act against U.S. citizens. It's the whole plot behind Project 2025 and thugs like Stephen Miller. Find any excuse to suppress Americans' freedom of speech and their First Amendment rights, and do it by any means necessary. Governor Gavin Newsom of California is completely on to Trump's game, by the way. He posted this on X. California, don't give Donald Trump what he wants. Speak up, stay peaceful, stay calm. Do not use violence, and respect the law enforcement officers that are trying their best to keep the peace. Solid advice. Newsom, who also, by the way, told Trump that he did not need the National Guard's assistance at all, also posted this on X. The federal government is sowing chaos so that they can have an excuse to escalate. This is not the way any civilized country behaves. But here's the thing. Trump and his MAGA base have no interest at all in a civil society. Here is Senator Bernie Sanders.
Look, Dana, we have a president who is moving this country rapidly into authoritarianism. He is suing media who criticizes him. He is going after law firms who have clients who were against him. He's going after universities that teach courses that he doesn't like. He's threatening to impeach judges who rule against him, and he's usurping the powers of the United States Congress. This guy wants all of the power. He does not believe in the Constitution. He does not believe in the rule of law. My understanding is that the governor of California, the mayor of the city of Los Angeles, did not request the National Guard, but he thinks he has a right to do anything he wants. And I would say that to a large degree, the future of this country rests with a small number of Republicans in the House and Senate who know better, who do know what the Constitution is about. And it's high time they stood up for our Constitution and the rule of law.
Trump does not believe in the Constitution. He does not believe in democracy nor the rule of law. And, as far as his wish for Republicans standing up against this regime, I wish I could believe that there is just a handful of Republicans who would do the right thing. But the MAGA Republican Party is so deeply corrupt now, and they have abdicated all power to Trump. It is really pathetic and weak, in my opinion. You had a group of 12 of them, including my own representative, Jen Kiggins, sign a letter saying, we will not touch Medicaid. We will not sign off on any, quote, big, beautiful bill that touches or deeply cuts Medicaid. And what did they all turn around and do? What do they all vote for? This big, ugly mass murder bill that will kick millions of us off of our health care. So much for their word being their bond. They are liars. So why would they find a conscience now? The other thing about this National Guard deployment in LA is that Trump was posting about the great job that the National Guard did in Los Angeles and attacking Governor Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass, when in fact, as Governor Newsom points out in this post, for those keeping track, Donald Trump's National Guard had not been deployed on the ground when he posted this. And I'm not going to read the whole post, but here's that whole whatever post by Donald Trump on his stupid Truth Social, where he's like, the radical left protesters will not be tolerated. Masks will not be allowed. Just his usual rage fest. But he posted that before the National Guard troops were deployed. So what does that tell us? That this whole thing was staged and planned in advance, because this is Donald Trump's endgame. Instigate violence, blame the citizens or the migrants, and then invoke martial law, which is why it is so critical that we do not walk straight into his vile trap. Listen to this clip from a former Biden DOJ official.
Can protect law enforcement. That's what it is.
Anthony, you are the former DOJ official at the table.
Right.
Is the border czar correct?
Let me just say, for the record, this guy just so happens to be on the ground in Southern California at the moment, right? This is not a coincidence. This is carefully orchestrated. And what's striking to me is just these images, to Elisa's point, these images are bad. The rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration is bad, but neither the images or the rhetoric match what's really happening on the ground across the country. On this particular issue, 2,000 troops, there have been 12 arrests. Right? That is completely disproportionate. And Donald Trump says the reason he is cracking down on this entire issue in terms of immigration is because violent criminals, undocumented, illegal aliens are infiltrating American neighborhoods. The fact of the matter is that violent crime in this country is at record lows. That started, you mentioned, in the Biden administration. That started in the Biden administration. I was in the room with U.S. attorneys across the country when they were announcing their tailored programs, crime prevention programs, to bring down, to arrest the curve of violent crime. And we're seeing the benefits of that just up the street in Baltimore, right? They have very few homicides at this moment. It's like record low homicides. So my point here is that Donald Trump creates all of these this rhetoric. He's using this rhetoric about an invasion of illegal immigrants when the fact of the matter is that violent crime is at a low.
Yeah. First of all, notice how the borders are. Tom Homan just conveniently is out in LA. Again, not a coincidence. And then also, do you see the cycle? Trump manufactures a crisis. He manufactures problems, and then he takes credit when he fixes them. Biden's on fire economy, the envy of the world, according to The Economist magazine. Trump wrecks it, and then he takes credit when he lowers some insane tariff down, from 145% to 30%. He's doing the same thing now with these bogus claims of criminal illegals, which is the offensive language used by MAGA heads. Crime went up during Donald Trump's first term. During COVID, there was a lot of restlessness. People were economically insecure, not sure what was happening initially. So crime numbers went up. Then under President Biden, when the economy leveled out, people were gaining jobs by the month. Crime dropped significantly. This is according to the FBI, including violent crime numbers. So Trump gins up this false narrative that Fox then amplifies, and the base soaks it up and then regurgitates. But it's simply not true. Anyway, kids, this is the ride we are on right now. It's called fascism. We have a mad tyrant in the White House, and he wants all power. He wants to be in power and control of everything. So we really have to play our hands very carefully and pray that our courts continue to hold strong and continue to uphold the rule of law. We need to keep protesting peacefully, because Donald Trump and his minions want to silence us into submission. I actually think that this latest dictatorial stunt that Trump pulled in LA with all of these ICE raids everywhere will motivate even more of you to join us in the No King's Day protests on June 14th. That's while he will be blowing up, literally destroying the streets of DC with all these tanks being shipped in from Texas with his insane $50 million ego parade. So we over here have to keep our heads level, but do not be silent, even when it's scary. And I know it's scary. I feel it too. But this is a moment of brightness. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is now back in the United States, isn't he? He may be facing these trumped up, pardon the pun, charges under Pam Bondi's corrupt DOJ. But from everything I've heard from legal analysts, these charges are like, they're not going to stick. He was never charged under the Biden administration, and the head of the criminal department at the DOJ said, I'm out of here. So what they did is they got him back to the US, but they just would never admit that they're eating crow, or that they actually finally had to obey a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling. So now they're bringing him back here, and at least he will get his due process, which is what every resident in the United States has by the rule of law, whether you're an actual documented citizen or not. And the reason is because millions of us spoke out. Millions of us would not let this go and pushed it through the courts. And we need to continue to do that for all of the men who were deported illegally to El Salvador and other places. We have to hold on to what this country was founded on and just don't walk into Donald Trump's trap of biting his bait for violence, because that's when he's going to drop the hammer and we're going to freaking be living in militarized North Korea. So namaste. I know it's hard, people. Namaste. Practice your, as my physical therapist says, practice your deep breathing, Suri, and peace in the storm.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.